Hi there, Sonia here. Welcome back to another episode of my Help I'm Artist podcast. Have you ever caught yourself staring endlessly at an empty canvas or a piece of paper, not knowing where to start? That even though art is your passion, you feel blocked and you can't seem to motivate yourself to start to create? We need to remember that when we go into our studio to start our creative process, we are never alone. You take your past, your friends, your critical sibling, the art world, and all your ideas and your thoughts with you. It's a crowded place, and it is quite an art and a challenge for every artist to quiet these voices and find peace within ourselves so that we can feel motivated and get to work. Chuck Close, an American painter known for his massive photorealistic portraits, is known to have said, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work." Easier said than done, don't you agree? This showing up. There are times in an artist's life when we feel tired. Maybe you've just finished a project and you feel empty and drained. As artists, we create from the inside. It's an inside job and requires a whole lot of courage and perseverance and stamina to show up. Finding motivation is part of an artist's job description. You are your own CEO. You are the boss of your own art business. You spend many hours in your studio alone, and you alone are the motor behind your creativity. And it takes courage to get up, to show up, and to do the work every day, not only when we feel like it. For my free resource, 5 Things Successful Artists Get Right, which you can download from my website, I did quite a bit of research and found 5 traits that set apart the mediocre artists from artists that are successful and consistently growing in their art and in their art business. One of these traits was the ability to commit to their choice of being a working artist. Rain or shine, they commit and they show up. In creativity, there is something known as the creative curve. In the podcast notes, I have made a drawing of it. Imagine a big, giant U. On the left side is often where we start our creative journey, or when we're starting a new creative project. The first brush strokes on the canvas, or the words on a paper, or the notes played are up there, on the left, on the top side of the U. We feel exhilarated about new beginnings. Everything is possible, and in our mind and imaginations, our creations are invincible and oozing with potential. As we continue our creative process, the painting or the poem or the design, our inner critic enters, and you start to doubt your talents, or your subject matter, or even your execution. And if you don't intervene quickly, it can be a slippery slope downward. You finally slide down the left stem of the U until you hit rock bottom. This is your D-Day moment. What do you decide down there in the bottom of your dip? Do you tear up your creation? Do you tear up your art, or do you walk away? Or do you decide to face the challenge and get to work? It is that trigger to give up or to keep going that sets the amateur apart from the serious artist. Remember, you're not painting by numbers. There's no script. You can only lean on your experience and the things that you have learned. You need to press forward. Find creative solutions to the problems that present themselves. There at the bottom of your creative curve, right there at the D moments, are the moments when your mobile phone becomes very interesting. You have the urge to go and do the laundry, or even maybe you want to go fishing. The ability to press through, making hard decisions, dusting yourself off, and starting moving up the creative curve. Yes, it does end at the top, but only if you press through. You start up the ladder and you see your solutions working. You remember what inspired you in the first place, and you start to see the big picture. Up, up you go, to the final sprint of victory, the finished painting, the song, or the vase. Remember this feeling, the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of completion, of being proud of your work, the work that you have made. Maybe it takes months, or just a moment, but you persevered and you made it. But many of us don't even make it to the creative curve, because the idea of reaching rock bottom is so fearful and uncomfortable that we don't even start. It is often easier just to be busy with the small things, that we don't conquer another curve. We hang around the edges of our creativity and never really dive in. As artists, we need to embrace and recognize these fears and feelings. Just recognizing them and acknowledging them takes away the sting. It helps to write down these feelings, expose their ugly voices, and decide that you're going to listen to another voice. Exchange all those what ifs with yes I can. If you feel that call to be an artist, because that is what it is often a call that comes from a deep place, deep inside your heart. You know that creating is like breathing. It would probably be easier to do something else and ignore the call altogether, but you know that you'll never live a satisfied and fulfilled life. And maybe you have given up. Maybe you're just too tired, or maybe you have failed too many times. Then it's time to dust off your feet, dust off your brushes and your notebook, and get going. Believe in your gift. Believe in yourself. This is the secret of finding your voice. It's that faith in yourself. You need to reach down and find your drive again. Don't think too much about the future. Don't try and plan it out and rationalize it. That's for later. Just get going. Start today. Procrastination is a word we often hear among artists. The delay, that paralyzing feeling, the distractions that come with a deadline. Remember, procrastination is an emotion. They are just that, they're an emotion. This emotion is pointing you to a direction and is actually a gift. You need to find what this feeling of procrastination is pointing you to. Is it fear, or is it pointing you to boredom? Do you need to change your technique or get help in an area that makes you feel insecure? Find out what it is. Don't ignore and push away these emotions, but find the direction in which they are pointing. Or maybe you're an artist and you've been working for years, but you've hit a block. Maybe your art is not selling, or you received a negative review, and you feel empty and you feel discouraged. Creative blocks are temporary. We all face them. This is good news. They come and they go. You are a human being, not a robot, not some kind of art machine. If you truly create from your heart, really dig down and create from your soul, you will experience creative blocks from time to time. The great artist enemy will sneak up on you, and it will take perseverance and bravery for you to find your drive again. And it helps when you understand the forces that motivated you to start off with. What was it that made you pursue an art career, or decide to give up your day job and to pursue life as an artist? What motivated you? What motivates you today? If being an artist means that we continually need to self-motivate ourselves, we need to have a good sense of what drives us. We need to be acutely self-aware. What drives you? What do you need in order to be and stay motivated? Our motivation comes from deep within and is intertwined by everything we do. We need to find out what motivates us. Motivations can be both external and they can be internal. External motivations are, as the word suggests, coming from the outside and can be anything from the praise of people, the good feeling of selling your art, or the recognition and the validation of your talents. Or maybe you're making your art in order to make the world more beautiful, or it is an expression of your faith. This is an internal motivator. These internal and external motivators will help you when the big CB, the creative block, comes. In this podcast, I will share 10 things that you can do in order for you to get and to keep your creative groove. But first, I want to say something about character. In this time of social media and online life, we can be bombarded with tips and tricks and help resources. They have the best intentions, but can often leave us feeling overwhelmed and ultimately paralyzed. We have to find out what works for us. You need to find out what works for you. Try out different things and discover what you are passionate about and what gets your creative juices flowing. There is no one size that fits all when it comes to motivation. The artist who knows to connect with his or her artist heart will be the artist that will have a sustainable and fulfilled art career. There are over 7 billion humans on the planet, each with a unique character. Our character determines why we act a certain way, or come up with certain solutions, or tackle a problem a certain way. Find out what character traits are more dominant in your personality, and work on those. I, for example, am strongly motivated by making sense of the world and sharing it with others. That's why I love researching and making this podcast. It helps me put things into perspective, and I can't help myself. I need to share it with you. Because this is part of my dominant character trait, it energizes me, and it doesn't cost me any extra energy or persuasion to get going each week. Work on your strengths. Find out your character, what makes up your personality. Are you an optimist, or are you filled with gratitude? Or do you have a natural curiosity? Or do you have great self-control, and are you filled with enthusiasm? Or are you someone that can persevere until the end? Whatever your character, recognize it and maximize it in your art and your art business. In my worksheet 007, I will list the 24 most common character traits, and this will help you narrow down your own dominant character traits. Look at the list and see if you can recognize yourself in these 24 traits. Find out what character traits intrinsically drive you. This is step number 1, discovering your motivation and what you need in order to have a steady flow in your art and your art business. So here they finally are, the 10 things artists can do in order to get back and to stay in their creative groove, in your creative groove, into the creative flow. We have already determined that as artists we are self-motivators, and this starts with the way that we think. In order to find a flow in our creativity, we first need to change the way we think. This is number 1, changing the way we think. Studies tell us that we have over 16,000 thoughts per day. How many of these thoughts are edifying, uplifting, and encouraging our artists' hearts to soar and to make art? That our thoughts have weighty consequences is summed up in this great quote. Watch your thoughts, because they will become words. Watch your words, because they will become actions. Watch your actions, because they will become habits. Watch your habits, because they will become character. Watch your character, because they will determine your destiny. So we go from thoughts, which produces words, which propels our actions, which creates habits, which then forms character and determines our destinies. Quite a sobering thought, and mind-boggling to think that my actions, or non-actions, start with a single thought. I will leave a copy of this quote and all the quotes that I mentioned in the podcast in the notes on my website. So you want to start a new painting or a new creative project, but you feel that you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not educated enough or pretty enough or arty enough. Only you have the power to change the way you think about yourself and your art. And developing a healthy mindset about yourself and your art will determine the course and the success of your art and your art career. So what are you thinking? What are you saying about yourself and your art? Determine to change your tune. Be kind toward yourself. Give yourself a break. Do whatever you need to build up your confidence. And realize that there's no real good or bad thoughts. good or bad emotions. They are thoughts, they are emotions, and they often direct us towards a certain direction. It's something that exposes an underlying value that is important for you. For example, maybe you've had a show and you received a negative review. You can let that review ruin your momentum. It can overshadow everything that you do, or you can embrace it and learn from it. Firstly, you need to find out if there's an element of truth in that was said over your art, and can you learn from it? Remember, you will never be to everybody's liking. Accept this and forgive yourself and move on. Then what are these thoughts and emotions of rejection and sadness really saying? It means that you value art, that your work is important, and in this instance that you felt misunderstood or undervalued. These are good things. If you reach out to find the value behind a feeling or an emotion, this will help you break the negative cycle. Focus on the value, not on the emotion. The emotion is not you, and often the emotion is not truth. Your values are far more important and deserve to be celebrated. It means you value something. You find art valuable. You find your expression and that which you have to say important. So focus on the values. Then another issue we face as artists, and that is rejection. Rejection is part of an artist's life, and we need to build up a resilience so that the criticism doesn't paralyze us, but that we can turn it around and use it to improve and empower our art. You cannot determine the way other people think about your art, but you as a person, you can determine how you think about yourself and about your art. So change the way you think. Change your tune. Artists are some of the most passionate people I know. They have the power to change and influence the sentiments and the emotions of people. This takes passion, it takes feeling, and it takes emotion. So when an artist loses his or her passion, it's like being a fish on dry land, not a happy place. And this brings me to motivator number 2, rekindling your passion. Can you remember why you wanted to be an artist? What are you passionate about? If you can turn that passion into art, what would it look like? Try and remember why you started art in the first place. Look through old diaries or notes if you have them, or find an art piece that really touched you when you made it, and rekindle this passion. What words come bubbling up? Write these down and get them up and out and on paper again. Why is it important that you and your art are seen and heard? Is there an intrinsic motive behind your work? For example, it was common belief in our Western culture that when we work, we are rewarded by money. If you work for an employer, you get a salary at the end of the month for your work and the energy that you delivered. Money has been a motivator and a reward for many centuries. As artists, we need more. What do you need as a reward for your work? Infuse your work with a new meaning. Find a higher purpose for your art and do it passionately. This brings me to motivator number 3, creativity and rest. In order to create, we need to put ourselves in a receptive state. Be open to receive, whether it is working in your garden, or reading a book, or taking a walk. If you are stuck, find a place where you can open up. Being stuck is a closed gesture. There is a block. Something is not moving. Something is in the way. Find an area where there is a flow, where there is movement. If you are a working artist, you can feel enormous pressure. We need to work in order to do our part. We don't want to disappoint our spouse, who was skeptical about our art career from the start, or let down our kids because we really want them to go to college, or let down our parents who told us that we were the best artist ever. And mostly we don't want to let down ourselves, because we stepped out and took a risk in pursuing our heart, and we don't want to prove our inner critic right. We feel the pressure, and we don't want to let them or ourselves down. This pressure can cause us to strive, to work very hard, sometimes burning the candle at both ends, and setting ourselves up to get totally burnt out. Learn to take the pressure off. Trust yourself enough that if you take a break, whether it is for an hour or whether you go on vacation, that you are committed enough to do the work. It helps to make an insertion point for yourself. When you are ready for a break, have something ready for you to start on when you come back, whether it is from vacation or from having a cup of coffee. If you have something planned to do when you come back, then it'll make it easier to make the transition and get to work. But learn to rest, learn to listen, and get into a receptive state, a place where you can be open to receive, because only when we receive, we can give and make our art. Number 4, be realistic about your time. Bill Gates supposedly said, most people overestimate what they can do in a day, but underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. Most of us have unrealistic expectations, especially when it comes to short-term planning. We jam our schedules full of all kinds of activities, and we often forget that making art takes time. A long time. Yes, and even longer than that. We live in a society that knows only instant gratification and undervalues time. It takes some practice to get a good grip on our time management. This is reason number 1 that would-be artists tell me they can't be creative. I just don't have the time. You have to create space and time for your craft. One thing that might help you is to commit to taking a class. I know I do. I need to have a consistent momentum in my creativity, so I take an art class once a week. No matter how busy I am, I attend the class. It's my time to be creative and to be expressive, and it's always inspiring to be around creative people and around other artists. We share stories about our art and about the latest exhibitions in town and where we can buy our art supplies. And if we commit to doing this every week, there will be momentum and our creativity will keep flowing. Find out what you need and what works for you, and how you can use your time in order to get your creativity flowing and keep it flowing. I recently read a study of how world-class violinists use their time and how they practice in order to perform at such a high level. The study showed they didn't practice more, but they practiced with more intent. They were very specific and strategic about how they used their practice times. They tackled the hard stuff, systematically working out of their comfort zone until they mastered a certain piece of music, then moved on to the next piece. Make the time you spend on your art very intentional. Plan times in which you work, and just as important, plan times in which you rest. Set an alarm if that will help you. These successful violin players I mentioned did not only practice with more intent, but they adopted a 90-minute playing and a 15-minute rest cycle. Every 90 minutes, they would rest for 15 minutes. Maybe you recognize this. When you love what you're doing, you can spend hours doing it. But research has shown that you need to rest. We need to take our eyes off the screen, take our eyes off the painting, or that what we are creating. It's only when we rest we can create. In the podcast notes, I have included an infographic. I love infographics. It's a picture and there's facts, and this infographic of some well-known and successful artists from the past and the present. In this infographic, it shows the schedules of artists like Charles Dickens, Maya Angelou, and Le Corbusier. You see what time of day they were more productive when they were writing or practicing their art, and what time of day they rested. It's interesting to see that not one of them have the same schedule. They all divided their time in different activities which they performed at different times of day. Some were more active at night, while others were more active in the morning. Find a schedule that works for you and stick to it consistently. Number 5. Look back at what you've done. Now, I'm very goal-driven. I'm a goal-driven person and I get motivated by my to-do list. I'm always so happy when I can tick off things at the end of the day. I go back through all the things that I've done, but lately I've added a new dimension to looking back over my day. In the midst of all my to-dos, I try and locate the things that were most meaningful to me. Not so much what I enjoyed the most, but what added the most meaning to my life. I found that these meaningful moments can be great motivators. Learn to celebrate little wins, steps in the right direction. Adopt an attitude of gratitude and be thankful. Don't look at what you don't have, but look for what you do have and celebrate this. At the end of the day, acknowledge what you have accomplished, however small. Acknowledge it and celebrate it. Maybe as you lie in bed, gratefully go through everything that you've accomplished that day. Number 6. Think big. Find your BOG, your big outrageous goal. There's nothing like a wild plan to get your adventurous, creative spirit sharp and ready, and that makes you feel alive. Set some big, outrageous goals. I call them my BOGs. Do you have BOGs for your art and your art career? One of my BOGs is to be financially free. I want to be able to teach and paint and write for extended periods of time in another country, together with my husband Marco, meeting new people, absorbing different cultures, and capturing this on canvas, on film, and in my writing. This crazy big goal has helped me many a time to get up and to get going, and one day it will happen. I've even made a collage of my BOG, and it is hanging in a prominent place where I see it every day. Maybe this will help you. Make a collage or a Pinterest board of your BOG and email it to yourself every day until you see your goal materialize. You have to see it. You have to keep your dreams and your goals alive. But how do you know what a BOG is? How do you know if it's big, outrageous, and what your goal is? It'll help to ask yourself these questions. Does your BOG stimulate you and excite you? Does it motivate you and create momentum in your life and in your art? Is your goal measurable and life-changing? Will it require you to stretch and step out of your comfort zone? Will people around you understand your BOG? And is your goal long-term? I've added the questions for you to review in my podcast notes. The best fuel for your creativity is some discomfort. Oh, we don't like this discomfort. We just want to stay in our comfort zone and just do what works and what has been applauded in our past. But you can try a new medium. You can try a new technique. You can do something scary, like talk to a stranger. But get out of your comfort zone. Only out of your comfort zone you'll feel that excitement and you'll feel alive. Number 7. Set the mood. Make your creativity as accessible as possible. Have your sketchbook with you wherever you go. Sketch and write and draw whenever you feel an idea or a line bubbling up. These sketchbooks are wonderful places to go when you feel dry and uninspired. Sure, screen time will help you, but gathering your own creative treasures is much more effective. Have real-life experiences. Draw from life or write in public spaces. This can be very invigorating and exciting. Or visit a museum or a gallery with the art that excites you. Maybe you have a favorite artist. Find a book about them, find out more about their lives, and be inspired by their work and about their lives. What can you learn from them? If you're in a pickle and you can't get to a museum, then there are some great apps where you can take a virtual tour of a museum and look at the art. Check out the one from the Rijksmuseum. It's the National Museum in Amsterdam. I will include the link in my podcast notes. Make your studio or your workplace an inspiring place in which you can create. Change the mood in your studio, maybe by tidying up or hanging up inspirational photos on the wall. Make your workplace accessible, a place where your creativity can flow. On to number 8, affirmation. I love quotes. Maybe you have seen this on my Instagram feed and on my Facebook page. Quotes are great because they capture the essence of a piece of wisdom in a few words. Surround yourself with affirmations. Write them on sticky notes or put them in your studio and your workplace. Work on a support base around you and your art. You need cheerleaders. As artists, we need the help of others and nurture relationships with artist friends or with mentors who will help you along the way. Relationships with others will also help you stay accountable and help you keep a clear focus on what you're doing and where you're going. Join a group or an art community. You can't do it alone. You need inspiration and the affirmation of others. We're nearly there. On to number 9. Motivator number 9. Sell something. When you sell a piece of art and actually get paid for it, is probably the greatest motivator ever. Let's face it, this success feeling of selling and earning money from your art is the happy hormone for artists. The money that you receive is great and can come in handy that you need to invest in art supplies or pay your rent or your insurance. But money is more than that. Money talks. It tells you that you are valuable, that what you are doing is worth something. The fact that somebody is willing to pay for what you have made is enough to get you back into your studio and have you do it all over again. Are you selling your art? A great motivator is to set up a system in which you can sell your art. Open an Etsy shop or offer your art via your Facebook page. Or ask a friend if he or she is willing to buy an art piece from you. Make something and sell it and celebrate it. The final motivator: perseverance. Realize that your art career will not happen overnight. Remember the quote I started this podcast off with, the one by Chuck Close? Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. Chuck was affected by a catastrophic spinal artery collapse in 1988. This attack left the artist severely paralyzed and terribly handicapped. Despite his disability, he continues to paint every day. He still teaches and sells his paintings to collectors worldwide. In the podcast notes, I will include 2 examples of Chuck Close's extraordinary photorealistic paintings. Your art career will take perseverance, just like Chuck. You are in it for the long run. When the going gets tough, we do not give up. We keep going, taking little steps forward. Well, that's all for this week. Be inspired, and if you hit a creative block or you're finding it hard to get back into your creative groove, then I hope these 10 things will help you reboot your creativity. I hope that you've realized that being blocked is normal and that all artists experience this from time to time. We looked at the artist curve and how there is an ebb and a flow in a creative process, how our character strengths, if used to our advantage, will help us regain our creative momentum. We looked at external and internal motivators, like changing the way we think, rekindling our passions, the importance of creating and resting, adopting a realistic view of our time, the importance of looking back and celebrating, setting some big, outrageous goals, and how we can set a mood in our studios and our workplaces, the importance of affirmations and the input from others, and that we should sell something, and how perseverance will set us up for the long run. In order to help you to get your creativity flowing, I've made a worksheet for you to download. The questions and answers will help you implement these boosters in your art and your art business. You can download the worksheet together with the 24 character traits on www.soniasmallhere.com/007. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. Leave a review on iTunes and hope to connect with you next time. Take care. Bye for now.